Hello and welcome back to Analysis with me, Jonathan Steele. Well, we've been talking about female genital mutilation. Although it has been illegal since it became an offence under the UK Prohibition of Female Circumcision Act in 1985, it remains a deeply rooted tradition that's performed by various communities in the UK and, of course, abroad. The latest FGM Act of 2003 modified the first law by making it illegal for FGM to be carried out on UK citizens overseas, thereby closing the legal loophole that allowed perpetrators to escape the justice system by going abroad. Those found guilty can now face up to 14 years in prison. However, to date, there have been no successful prosecutions, and its performance on young women and girls remains prevalent. The practice itself reflects a form of physical, emotional, and psychological violence carried out against women in the context of the power of control. So what can be done to strengthen the enforcement of these legislations? And how might law enforcement against FGM in the UK compare to that in other countries? Is it any better elsewhere? And what can the police and the National Health Service do to identify potential victims and help those who are affected? We're rejoined now by the consultant sociologist Hilary Burridge. We're also joined by Dr. Comfort Momo, who's an FGM specialist and the founder of the African Well Women's Clinic at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospitals in London. On the phone, we're very glad to have Detective Chief Inspector Jane Scotchbrook from the Metropolitan Police. Well, let me start with you, Detective Inspector Scotchbrook. Why have there been no successful prosecutions after almost 30 years that it's been illegal?
It's always one of the first questions we're asked, obviously. But one of the main problems we have is that FGM is often performed on young victims who do not want to come forward and speak out against parents or other family members, which is quite understandable. Often there are no witnesses to this form of abuse, whereas with other crimes you may hear something from neighbours or people who hear or see things. You know, this is very much a one-off incident, and so we don't get those people that come and assist us and give us other information. We've also got communities, we're told, who don't actually discuss the issue amongst themselves. So if they don't do it amongst themselves, then they are unlikely to come and speak to us. And we, the police, are actually at the very end of the line. We rely on people giving us the information so that we can act upon it. So we need, and we're trying to strengthen the information sharing protocols with education, with health, for them to give us the information so that we can act upon it.
Well, some people have suggested there should be a law that makes it a failure to protect somebody from FGM. In other words, if a young girl came forward at school or somewhere else and said, this has happened to me, you could sort of almost assume that the parents had failed to protect her, and that would be illegal. Would that help?
I mean, I think that the law is there, and it needs to be tested in the first instance. You know, that this is child abuse, whichever way you look at it. So the laws are already in existence, but we need to know about the instances. So it's about raising awareness within the health environment, within the educational environment, so that they know and recognise some symptoms, and then can inform us or social services if they believe a child is at risk, and then we can work out the safeguarding activity that needs to take place.
Well, Comfort Momo, let me come to you. I mean, you're an expert on this thing. Do you think there is more the police can do, or is it a kind of environmental, social issue that makes it hard for people to come forward as witnesses?
I guess that there is still more that the police still need to do, definitely, in engaging with the community. Because we know, like Jane has rightly said, it's a cultural issue, it's a hush-hush thing, but we really need to work with the community. We need to empower the young girls, so the young people, to speak out, because what we're asking is for them to report cases, for them to report their parents, for them to report their community. So one way or the other, we need to work with the young people. We need to empower them. So we'll still have lots to be done here in the UK.
Well, Hilary Burridge, I mean, in France, it seems there have been something like 100 people they've actually got prison sentences for this. I mean, how come it's more effective in France?
They've been sentenced in one way or another, some of them quite severely, depends on the extent of their involvement and so forth. In France, they have a system where there is a named responsible officer in each, what we call local area.
You mean police officer?
No, a guardian ad litem type person, a person who takes care of the child. Immediately, there is a question about child abuse of some sort, and FGM is very centrally child abuse. There is somebody who looks after the child's interest and no other, isn't there? So that is the first thing. So the child is protected. As soon as there is any suspicion that there's something to be worried about, right? At the same time, the police go in and try to find out what's happening. You don't actually have to have been the cutter to be guilty. You have to have been involved in some sort of way. Now, to begin with, people were a little bit lenient and then they realised that, in fact, the leniency was actually leaving other children exposed to the risk. You cannot be lenient about child abuse. You have to be very clear that that is child abuse. But one thing that I would say is, if we get in early enough and if we persuade little boys and girls to tell their teacher that their sisters are at risk, then in fact that's a very strong message to children. If you tell us now, we may be able to stop it happening and then mummy and daddy will not be in trouble. And I think that that is part of where the police can help us a lot. They can be looking out. And I would say too, whilst I greatly respect the endeavours of those police officers involved, and I know some of them and they do work very hard, you know, if we spent 100th the time and energy we spend on looking for drugs or something, on looking for perpetrators of child crime, of hurting children, then maybe we'd be getting somewhere. It requires really thorough detective work. Very few people are going to turn up, you know, and just say, oh, by the way, I've just been mutilated. You know, of course they're not. It requires very thorough checking out. And I'm not sure until recently, though it may have changed that. And I would add just one other thing to that, which is that in order to read the signs in the community that it may be going to happen, we do have to have a very diverse and two-gender police force.
Well, we are joined, excuse me, we are joined on Skype by Nana Oyote, who's the director of Forward, the campaign group that's really been pushing this issue recently. Nana, do you think the police can be doing more? What should they be doing?
Female genital mutilation is a cultural practice. And the reality is that the police can do so far as the communities are willing to engage with the police. And we recognize that there are a lot of assumptions here that communities are doing FGM because they know about the law, and that that young girls are prepared to testify.
I'm sorry. There is a terrible problem on your line with the sound. We'll have to come back to you a bit later on, Nana. I'm sorry about that. Can I come back to you to Jane Scotchbrook? I mean, does every police force in the country now have dedicated staff who are dealing with this issue, or is the Met rather unusual in having somebody like you? Have we now lost Jane Scotchbrook from the...
Hear me?
Yes, I'm just asking whether the Met is unusual in having a dedicated person like you to deal with this issue. Do other police forces in Britain have staff that are concentrating on this?
So obviously I can really only speak on behalf of the Metropolitan Police Service, and we have Project Azure, which is dedicated to this work. There are other police forces actually who are doing work, certainly Greater Manchester, down in Avon and Somerset. So there are other areas, and certainly the Government of Wales are looking to raise the profile as well. So people are beginning to do work about it, and obviously the profile is being raised. If I could just come in on a couple of points that were mentioned. And you're right, it would be about education in schools. And certainly as far as the Met are concerned, we've actually created a brochure which is going out to all the London schools so that teachers have an understanding of what FGM is, of signs and symptoms, and of various organisations that can assist. The trouble with schools and the curriculum is that it's not down to the police who can make those decisions as to what actually goes into the schools. That's down to head teachers. so we can only suggest what we think should be going in there. We certainly take child abuse very seriously. We have a CPS protocol in respect of this, so and work closely with the CPS for when the case comes in. We get a lot of referrals, and we've been doing a lot of intervention work around FGM, so preventative. So I would say we are certainly doing a lot of work. We also can't be really compared to other countries. We have different laws, different legislation. France, they actually examine their young girls up to the age of 6. We don't have that here. I don't know whether that would come in, but we don't have it. And the one where there are lots of convictions, actually, there was actual evidence that was helping someone who kept very, as I understand this, and it is obviously anecdotal, but someone who kept very good records of all the cutting that they'd carried out. So, stuff can be done, and so they were very fortunate that they had that information. So,
you mentioned that you provide leaflets for parents.
Yeah,
what about leaflets for children? To tell young girls, if you hear something like this is happening, or people are going to do this to you, come forward if you want to a teacher or a health person.
Well, we've done it for teachers, which is certainly quite a big thing that we've been doing, and we're educating schools liaisons officers as well. You're right, it is. It's about informing children, informing communities, and actually we're having a community conference at the end of March, which is aimed at speaking to the communities, wanting to empower them so that they feel they can come forward and they can tell us about it.
And what's happening with you with your Well Women's Clinic? I mean, are you able through that to educate people?
I guess at the Well Women's Clinic, we're able to educate the women and the community. I work very closely with non-governmental organizations as well. And also it's about raising awareness among doctors, among nurses, among frontline providers. I did a recent survey monkey on GP's knowledge, and it shows lack of knowledge still, which is not surprising because GP are meant to be the first point of call, and if they don't know how to deal or where to refer women and girls to, then we're failing the girls and the community. But we raise awareness with doctors, we do lots of training, we tell care providers, especially frontline providers, and also with the community, because it's about empowering them, like I said, and it's about raising awareness and also signposting professionals to know what their roles and responsibilities are in terms of, as we see it, as child abuse.
But Jane Scotchbrook mentioned that in France, doctors can examine girls up to the age of 6. I mean, would that not be a good thing in Britain if the doctors had that legal right or power to do that?
I have my reservation with that. If you're going to do any examination, you have to examine everybody, all the children, not isolating children from a particular culture or children from a particular country or tribe.
But it would be a good thing to examine all children to make sure they're healthy and they have
it's not a
well,
long examination.
There's still debates going around that, because in the past, when my kids were little, I remember religiously the health visitors did examination from birth till up to school age, but we don't have that practice anymore. If that comes back, then maybe that'll be the way forward, but we still need to debate around that. But if you're going to examine girls, you have to examine everybody.
Well, no. Let's come back to you. I gather that the Skype connection may be better this time. Where are you going to go forward with your Forward organisation, the campaign? I mean, you've had remarkable success in the last few days already. Are you seeing any sign that Michael Gove, the Education Secretary, is going to follow your recommendation to make it, to tell every school about the issue?
I think clearly we need the schools to get engaged on this, on the subject. The other thing which we really feel hasn't been done is engaging teachers in a very critical way, and we hope that Michael Gove would be willing to bring about change. However, we are seeing that teachers themselves are contacting Forward to ask for information and support. which is a very big change and shift. But I think my concern is that we also need to recognize that we want to work on prevention. Yes, schools are very critical, but that would only happen when FGM has been done. And we aim to make sure that there is prevention. You know, we don't want to pick up the pieces with girls telling teachers that they've already been through FGM. We want girls to actually say that it has never happened to them. And this is where we forget that communities are very critical. And I think this is where Forward is trying to work with communities, to bring communities on the table, to give them the skills and the confidence to make a break with this harmful traditional practice.
And what would you like the medical profession to do? Do you think they should be more proactive in this?
Unfortunately, the medical profession, again, you have very patchy situation. There are some who are very knowledgeable, and there are others who have no clue about FGM. In terms of standards, even around booking women to find out whether they have FGM, very few people have uniform standards. And I think as Comfort is very much aware, her service, they ask the question. Everybody needs to ask the question. And one thing we see over and over again is that medical professionals don't know how to communicate with women. They have to ask them, they have to inform them, because the period at which women are with them when they deliver, they are best placed. You know, the GPs don't ask the questions, the practice nurses don't ask the questions, and unfortunately, some midwives don't ask the question. So we are losing opportunities to be able to effectively engage.
Well,
and Forward research has shown that.
I'm afraid we're coming to the end. We've got just 1 minute. Comfort and Momo, midwives, should they all be much more proactive?
I think so. We should. Everybody should be proactive because, like we said, child abuse is everybody's business. We need to know what our roles, our responsibilities are, definitely.
Well, on that note, we'll have to come to an end. So thank you very much, Nana Atu Ayorta. I'm sorry about the Skype problems. Thank you, Detective Chief Inspector Jane Scotchbrook. Thank you, Hilary Burridge, and thank you, Comfort Momo. And of course, thank you all for watching.